Well, I was born in Essex Junction, Vermont. I lived there till I was about 2 or 3, then moved to Manchester, New Hampshire. Then when I was about 10, we moved back to Essex Junction, Vermont. And I lived there until 73 when I moved up to Newport.
My mom really enjoyed exercising. When we were young, our mailbox was a half mile away from the house. We walked it in the afternoons. She enjoyed being a seamstress. I think she liked being a mom too.
Ann and I just sort of hanging out, and she said, I've got a wicked headache. And within moments she was in the bathroom, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Well, I had a stroke in May of '06, and I went to Dartmouth Hospital for about 3 months.
When we first evaluated Ann, she had locked-in syndrome, and locked-in syndrome is basically a stroke that happens in your brainstem.
She was unable to communicate except with her eyes. Really had maybe just some minimal facial movement, but that was it.
They got it to the point of blinking her eyes once for yes and twice for no.
You know, all of us would have counted her prognosis for substantial improvement in the single digits.
She needed a way to communicate. She was unable to feed herself. She was unable to dress herself or really do anything for herself.
So our job was to see what we could do for her rehab-wise, and hopefully at least give her some quality of life.
What we were working on, our main theme for physical therapy, was maintaining her range of motion. When Ann came, she couldn't move anything. She was very rigid.
Well, the whole time we were working on basic communication, we were still working on swallowing or motor skills, which she had none of. I mean, not hardly any movement in her face. So we did a lot of passive range of motion.
Down the road, therapy gave her a communication board that seemed to help out a lot because she could communicate better with us.
If you ask her, she'd say that she doesn't remember anything that happened. That first year was sort of lost.
But it was just such slow progress, very, very slow progress. I mean, seeing her thumb move an extra half an inch was a great gain.
I remember through the different therapists, they were trying to get reaction out of Ann.
She had regained a little bit, but in an entire year, it was really very small incremental steps. And there wasn't a whole lot of hope that she was going to really dramatically improve from there. She began to make these more dramatic improvements.
I knew if there was a will for her to get better, she'd find the way. And I just knew it.
And I think all of us could see it in Ann's eyes. She was just a fighter from the start, and we all saw her fight, and it really motivated us to continue to push on and push on beyond where we thought. We didn't know where this was going to end up.
There was a very exciting day when I gave Ann a pen and put a paper in front of her and asked her if she could write something for me.
Remember, when she came in, she could only blink her eyes, so therapy had gotten her to have some writing skills with a special instrument that they constructed for her. And her first writing was to tell her husband that she loved him.
We got her to sit on the edge of the bed, and she was able to look out her window, and we started working on balance.
We did the tilt table, and then after the tilt table progressed to a modified platform walker.
She was on a puree diet for a few months, and again working with OT on getting her feeding herself. And she stayed on the thickened liquids, and then we just plugged away at it little at a time. And then finally her oral skills were enough to be able to start chewing again, moving the food around safely, being able to control it to swallow.
I think the biggest thrill was when Jan came to get me to show me her walking, and that was phenomenal.
Then gradually after a year, things started to improve, and I got to where I could talk, and I got to where I could use a walker, and I did a little more rehab.
When she started to be able to not only have a voice, but be able to move her articulators enough to produce, to articulate words was quite a shock.
I know it was hard for Ann to do that, but it was the encouragement of the therapist.
So at about that time, it kind of clicked. I think she's almost ready for an acute rehab stay. So this was always Ann's goal from the beginning.
It got to the point where Ann was saying, I need more therapy.
To reach a point where she could qualify to go to a rehab facility to gain her complete independence was, I think, beyond anybody's scope of imagination at the time she presented.
Dr. Tremblay and I, we wrote letters to the acute rehab center and kind of told her status and kind of begged for her to place her in there.
I had a call at work, and generally when the rest home called, it was sort of like, oh no, what's Ann done now?
And they called me to the meeting and they said, oh, you're going to Mount Scottney tomorrow.
And it was like, Sherman, we got to go back to the room and pick everything up. We're leaving tomorrow morning. And it's like, she was just like a slave driver. It was really funny.
The day that Ann left for Mount Scottney was very sad for us.
And we had a beautiful breakfast in the morning with a table set for us. And we got a t-shirt with the names all signed on it.
The staff stood in the hall. Every staff member were in the hall, and she had a great send-off.
And the way I went to Mount Scottney, and I felt really something, because I left here in a wheelchair, but I came back walking on my own. And that really meant a lot.
Looking back over the 3 important years of her illness, she had a devastating event that no one would have expected any substantial recovery on.
And I figured it was about time to come and visit, and I was able to walk in. And they were having a meeting, and they all cheered and clapped, and it was really rewarding.
There was probably a couple of years where if someone had said, you know, in a year's time your mother will be home, I would have said, you're nuts. There is no way that lady is going to make it home.
And then I ran into her in the pharmacy like 2 months ago, and she tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around and she was standing up with her hand on the cart, and I just couldn't even believe it was her.
I have a really strong faith in God, and I just figured I'd take it a day at a time and just see what happened.
I felt that I'd been given another chance with Ann, and I wanted to give this the best chance I had.
I notice that it's the little things that count now is what really matters to them.
It certainly taught me, or reiterated the lesson that you can't give up. Don't ever doubt the human will.
One of the many lessons to be learned here is that despite overwhelming odds in life, never give up hope. Ann never did, and neither did we. The power of the human brain to heal itself is really an amazing thing. Faith, hope, and believing in possibilities, these are the makings of a remarkable story.